Hi everyone. So today I have a really fun and easy watercolor project for you. We are going to make Valentine's Day cards using Colorado Craft Company's Love's Kiss stamp set. Now this is a beautiful stamp set and it features a really large pair of lips or a kiss print, and there are lots of great sentiments like this one here from Marilyn Monroe. So let's go ahead and get started. So I am stamping the lips on a piece of Arches cold pressed paper. I use some distress ink in antique linen because we are going to be watercoloring in this image, and the distress ink will kind of just wash away as we add the color down. So I'm going to start by adding a really light wash. I am using anthracanoid red, or at least that's how I think you pronounce it. It's a really, really pretty, bright, bold red. And we're going to start by applying this like nice light wash down that I got by just mixing some of the pigment with a bunch of water in my little water dishes on the side there. And I am using, I think this is a number 8 round brush. And I'm just being sure around the edges of the lips, I want the edges to be kind of craggly. So I don't want them to be straight because I want it to look the way that a lip print would actually look if you were to, add it to a card or add it to a piece of tissue or whatever. So I'm just being real careful around those edges to leave little craggly lines. And then I just kind of fill in the rest of the base. And I kind of like that the antique linen distress ink is mixing a little bit with the color there. Once we lay down our base coat, we're going to add a more concentrated version of the pigment. So here I just took some pigment on my brush and I mixed it with very, very little water, and I'm just running it along the edges, along those craggly little edges, and I'm going to let it bleed up into the rest of the image. And then I'm going to do the same along the top here. And this was such a fun project. I think I made 3 or 4 pairs of lips this morning, just kind of adding the wash and then going around the edges like I'm doing here. And then I'm going to show you how to put some texture into the lips in a second. So we are going to put a couple of layers of color on this card. So this is just the second layer now after the wash. And now for this texture that I'm adding, I am just doing little flicks with my paintbrush, and I switch to, I think this is either a 4 or a 6, whatever side you feel comfortable with. That's going to give you these nice thin lines here. So the way that I think of it as I was doing it, it's kind of like you're making zebra stripes, but in red, right? So it starts really, really thick at the base, and then it kind of just comes to a very, very fine point, and the pigment gets lighter as well as you get to that point. Kind of like hair flicks with Copic markers. That's another, another similar technique to how we're doing the lips here. So if you're familiar with that, it's just kind of more of the same here. And then what we want to end up with on that bottom lip is we want to have the center fairly light with those little ridges of the lips very, very light. So that's what that little striping strokes kind of leaves us with. Now for the top lip, I've sped this up because it's the same exact technique as we had done on the bottom lip. So we're just now adding that second layer, which is the deeper pigment, less water, running it all along the edges, and then we're going to kind of flick up and then down to make our little textured lip print. And then by the time we're done with this, we're going to go down to the bottom lips and add our third coat of paint. I think we're going to end up with 4 coats of paint at the end. So now I've let the bottom lip dry a little bit, and now I'm going to start adding in some even deeper color. So for this, I am using pigment that is mixed a little bit with the water there. So it's not as thick as that outline that we had put down in layer 2, but it is definitely thicker than layer 1. And you can kind of see that by the way the color is hitting the page. Now that's a little beauty mark, so I just stamped it with Distress ink, and we will color it in a little bit. And here I'm paying a lot of attention to the center of the lip because I wanted there to be like a little indentation there. So I'm just kind of playing around with my shading, and I urge you to do the same. Like, you know, the highlights on the lips can appear in different parts. You can have the darker part of the lips be towards one of the corners. You can have a highlight, you know, on the bottom, on the top. It's really up to you. So just kind of play and have fun. And the cool thing about lips, if you look at photos online, they have some really, really striking highlights. So it's a good chance to, you know, play and be really theatrical and leave some really bold white stripes. So here I didn't really leave much white space, but we are going to add that in a little bit. I'm going to show you how to do that with some white gouache paint. So I am continuing to darken up those little ridges, and the method that I'm using is wherever there is a dark red line, I am following it with this layer, but being sure to make sure that these lines are a little bit thinner so some of that other red from layer 2 shows through. So again, it's like just building up the highlights and building up the contrast. Similar to, you know, what you would do with Copic markers. At least that's how I see it, because that's the color medium I'm most familiar with. This watercolor is somewhat new to me, so I am pretty much a student at this point. I'm just having fun. And now those bottom lips are looking pretty good to me, so I'm just going to add some final touches there. And then we can move on to our top lip, and I've sped this up, and it's really just the same technique that we had done for the bottom lip. And that little smear on the bottom lip, don't worry, we're going to take care of that later on. But even so, I guess lipstick can get smeared, so it could also be part of the image as well if you wanted to keep it there. And then as you can see, the lips on the bottom, the color is really sticking this time because at this point we have 3 layers of color on those lips. So now the color is really deepening and darkening and just brightening as well. So it's kind of like magic as that happens as you add your different layers of watercolor down. Okay, now we're going to color in the little mole above the lip, and I am using some brown watercolor. I think this one is brown iron oxide, and then I'm just actually trying to take away a little bit of color with a dry brush here just so that the brown doesn't look flat, so it'll look like there's a little bit of dimension. And now we're going to add some white highlights with some white gouache. So I've taken some white gouache and I have added a little bit of water, and I have a very fine paintbrush here. I think this is a 1 or a 0. And I'm just adding in the slightest bit of color right in the center of those highlights. So I'm not covering the entire highlight. I'm just being sure to add like a faint highlight in the center. And for me, I found that that was most effective to do it that way. You could, of course, do a much bolder highlight. And I urge you to, take a look at some of the images that are on Google and on Pinterest to just see how just wild and dramatic people get with their white highlights. So there's just lots of ways to do it. You don't have to do it exactly as I'm doing here. You can not do it at all. So I'm going to show you another version of the card where I didn't add any white highlights. I just relied on the lighter areas that I was careful to paint around when making the first, when just painting the card. And then for this one, we have some kind of light white highlights here, but I may try another one where it's really, really bold, where we have some thick white highlights, but we'll have to see what the coming days hold. So I'm just adding one more layer on the little mole, just so that it is pretty and dark and doesn't fade. And now that looks pretty good to me. So now we can go and die cut our lips. So I'm using a slimline die from Trinity Stamps here. I've been loving slimline cards lately. And I thought it was perfect for these lips because they are pretty big and would take up most of an A2 size card. This is some black glossy specialty paper by Tonic that I glued the card panel to. And then these sentiments are both from that Love's Kiss stamp set by Colorado Craft Company. And I thought that this was a cute sentiment. It says, Happy Valentine's Day. Love is friendship set on fire. And then we have these little mirrored hearts that I got from Honeybee Stamps. So we're just going to add 3 of those. I thought that for this kind of romantic, sexy card that the little mirrored hearts would work really, really well. And now let's take a look at our other version of the card. So this one, I didn't use any white gouache for highlights. That is just done through the painting process. And this one has the quote that says, "A good kiss is worth another" by Marilyn Monroe. So that is all I have for you now, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you give these watercolored lips a try. It's a lot of fun, and it will make a stunning card for your loved ones. Thanks a lot, and I will see you again soon in the next video.